Hello and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. We appreciate our viewers asking us what we think about certain countries in the world. We do the research on the countries we talk about to get to the bottom of issues. We don't hold back on the details just because it's not popular. Our videos have a different perspective to them because we actually try to balance out the sensationalism that is so prevalent all over the internet. We're going to answer some of your questions today. So here goes. Are you ready? Brace yourselves. Someone asked what we think about the future of the Philippines. It's a good question. Do you have a projection for the Philippines? The Philippines is still cheaper than many Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, or Singapore. That means there is still room for prices to keep going up before the prices bubble and froth over. Doing a price comparison with the Philippines, I chose Bangkok, Thailand, another popular country with expats, and just as we thought, the prices are slightly higher in Bangkok, Thailand, being 25% higher overall. What is important to note is the longer the countries have been promoted by vloggers on the internet, the higher the prices will go before the bubble pops. But it also depends on the size of the city and how many foreigners are there, and tourism can also make prices go higher. Countries such as Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia have not been getting promoted for as long as the Philippines and Thailand have. Hence, these three countries are still cheaper than both the Philippines and Thailand. As an example of that, Hanoi, Vietnam is much cheaper than Manila, Philippines. The attraction for the Philippines is the affordability, the beauty of the country, and that they speak English. Filipinos love Americans, and Americans love the Philippines because it's easy for them as they mostly speak English, and they are very pleasant people. Let's put it this way. I think that Southeast Asian countries have been seeing a huge cycle trend of people going there and leaving there. We call it the revolving door. And the Philippines, along with Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore, have seen the most tourism and the most price spikes. Thailand was cheaper than Cuenca, Ecuador about 5 years ago. Not anymore. Favoritism is leaning towards the Southeast Asian countries at the moment. That's at the moment. Things can change. In Europe, the trend is for Italy, Portugal, France, and Spain, and it isn't going to stop anytime soon. All the people that have not gone abroad yet and need to travel abroad to check out these countries or to move to these countries, whether it is Southeast Asia or Europe, are going to do it no matter what anyone says. These two trends, Southeast Asia and Europe, are not going to stop anytime soon either. They're going to stay trendy. Now back to the Philippines. There seems to be less of culture shock for Americans living in the Philippines than there is in Thailand. It also appears there is less of resentment and animosity of the foreigner in the Philippines, meaning we have all heard the American go home narrative from the Mexicans, Portuguese, Colombians, and Spaniards, right? But not so much from the Southeast Asian countries yet. But with all of that said, we think the Philippines will continue to attract foreigners from all countries because of its affordability, the easygoing nature of the people, and the overall crime has not reached the levels of Latin America. In addition, as more and more foreigners continue to go to the Philippines, the crime against foreigners does go up. Most of it is petty crime, but some of it is not so petty. Americans are considered rich in these countries, and as friendly as they seem on an individual interaction, there are bad apples that roam the streets, and Philippines is not immune to violent crimes toward the foreigner. Moving on to the next question, where someone is asking about secret countries and our opinion on these 4 countries. Here goes. They said, could you make a video about up-and-coming countries for retirees? I think Uruguay, Vietnam, Albania, Montenegro, and France are best secrets. Your opinion? 3 of those countries you mentioned are not secrets anymore. France and Uruguay are on the Retire Abroad Media's most talked about countries list and have been for quite some time. Lots of people are now going to Vietnam, as we talked about previously, how Southeast Asia is going through a trend cycle right now. And Montenegro is getting discovered by digital nomads. Albania is the only country that could be considered a secret place, but would you want to live there? We'll talk about Albania and Montenegro in a moment. Let's start with Uruguay. Uruguay was discovered about 10 years ago when the Rams started pumping it. Surprisingly, there are less expats that live in Uruguay than its two neighbors of Argentina and Brazil, which both have seen droves of expats go there over the years, especially Brazil. When you do the research on YouTube, there are way less Uruguay vloggers compared to Panama, Costa Rica, Portugal, Spain, and Mexico, which have hundreds and hundreds of people vlogging about them every day. The other clue is the videos that are about Uruguay don't have that many views, and so people aren't as interested in Uruguay as they are in Colombia, Spain, or Mexico right now. How I know this is through doing the deep dive research. One of the things I use is the YouTube search. You need to use correct phrases, and in this instance, that would be Uruguay vlogs in the search, and the filter should be put on about a month so you can get a more accurate idea of vloggers there. Because vloggers, they come and go. Vloggers are like a revolving door. So as you can see for yourself, there is not much going on in the vlogosphere for Uruguay. There are a few vloggers, but not that many. The really nice thing about Uruguay is the infrastructure. Doing the research on cleanest drinking water in Latin America about 10 years ago, Uruguay had the cleanest and safest water in Latin America. The government spent billions of dollars to make the water safe for human consumption. Every developing country in Latin America should follow Uruguay's lead. Uruguay has some very nice beaches in the expat community of Punta del Este outside of Montevideo. And by the way, some call Punta del Este the Monaco of Uruguay, and it's where all the expats go. Uruguay is the most expensive country in South America, but still much cheaper than the USA. Here's a cost of living comparison I did with Virginia Beach, Virginia. However, when compared to Budva, Montenegro, which you also want our opinion on, it is much less expensive. And ironically, Uruguay has been touted for a much longer time than Montenegro. So we found that a little bit interesting. Now that monthly expense figure is for the locals, by the way. Expats report spending multiples of that on par with Panama, but Uruguay is not tropical, and it's also much further away than, say, Europe, which has similar attractions. It's also not tropical, but it's much easier to get to. In conclusion, Uruguay is more built up, more expensive, but has less expats there than its next-door neighbors of Brazil or Argentina. Bottom line, Uruguay is not a secret, but it's more of a secret than France. So, let's move on to France. France has never picked our interest at all, and so we don't really keep up with France too much. Americans seem to favor France for permanent residency more than Italy, but that may be changing soon. Italy is starting to see more and more Americans move there in the past 2 years. According to the World Population Review, France has 62,000 American expats living there in 2024. Expats say the healthcare is great in France. You really need to get on some expat forums and read comments under the videos about France. There, you'll learn more about what people think who have spent time in France. Although you should always get a second and sometimes third opinion on anything that is really important to you. Knowing basic French is a benefit to you if you intend on living there for any length of time. You asked for our opinion, and here it is. We wouldn't live anywhere in the European Union on a permanent basis. Now, if the EU wasn't in the picture, that would change things dramatically. If you don't know why, we don't need to go there. It's a different story for a different time. There are lots of pleasant places around Europe that would be suitable as long as there aren't very many foreigners present, but isn't that the challenge these days? Moving on to the last two countries and providing our opinion. Montenegro and Albania are situated right next to each other. Montenegro is half the size of Albania and has been promoted longer and is more expensive, according to Numbeo. Montenegro is becoming more well-known since there are capitalists and wealthy nomad investors promoting the place, and more vloggers are coming out of the woodwork talking about the main tourist cities such as Budva, which they like to call the Miami of Montenegro. But it's nothing like Miami. Let's just get that one straight. The promoters love to tell you how such and such place is the new Florida, or you can't do this in California. That way they can up the price and then tell you Montenegro is like Miami, Florida. Actually, Montenegro and Albania are both pretty countries. They are situated along the Adriatic Sea with picturesque mountains in the backdrop. There's also a lovely lake situated between the two countries. Montenegro has a citizenship by investment program if you're interested in that. Just invest almost $500,000 and you've got a second citizenship. If that doesn't suit your fancy, you can just get a Montenegro temporary residency permit, and after 5 years, you can apply for permanent residency and renew it every 5 years. Yes, these countries are now doing the permanent residencies that need renewed, so they can keep gouging money from the foreigner indefinitely. Simplicity seems to be the opposite of most, if not all, bureaucracies. But you can invest in a cement building in the country of Montenegro for no less than 250,000 euros and land yourself a permanent residency. I think anyone moving to Montenegro will have a language barrier unless they speak one of these 4 Balkan languages: Montenegrin, Serbian, Bosnian, or Albanian. English is not widely spoken in Montenegro. Albania is up and coming, and if you want to call it a secret, it would be the least discovered and talked about of the countries you listed. Albania is trying to bring in foreign investment and build up their economy to rival that of Montenegro, and so it will become more expensive. If you want to get ahead of the game and invest in real estate or buy a home before all the crowds and get the most value for your money, Albania would be the best choice on your list. There, the secret's out. Our research is showing that American citizens get 1-year visa-free stay in Albania. The cities where you might find a small expat community are Saranda on the coast, looks very peaceful, and the capital city of Tirana. Is there crime in Albania? Yes, but it's moderate, but higher than in Montenegro. Here are the stats on crime between the two countries, according to Numbeo. The no-go for us is that you should not drink the tap water in Montenegro or Albania. It befuddles the mind that these countries can ask for 250,000 euros so you can have permanent residency, and they still have unfit water for human consumption. Here it is. It lists all the countries where the tap water is clean and safe to drink, and here are the countries where it's saying it is risky. These lists are just general. Each area listed may and usually does have sub-areas that you would want to avoid the water. Having clean drinking water is on the top of our list wherever we happen to be. And here's a second opinion about the water in that area of Europe. After living abroad for 13 years in endemic areas and moving to a developing country in Europe does not sound idyllic to us. But that's just our opinion, which you asked for, and we're just giving it to you. So that's it for today, everyone. Let us know if you like this type of video, and maybe we can start answering some of your questions a couple times a month in upcoming videos. Take care, everyone. Be blessed, and bye-bye.